Thank you for staying with us through this panel in which we will have the opportunity to discuss in further detail some of the subjects mentioned in the previous one. We don't want to break tradition, so again we will start with a small video. This video has to do with the implementation of the FootballNet activity of Barça Foundation in Brazil. It is an implementation in which the Stavros Niarchos Foundation is not directly involved, but it is worthwhile because it gives an idea of the blueprint of that activity. We will use this starting point to discuss a wide variety of issues that have to do with football in public space, as I said. And since this is a subject that is so huge, we will refer to a number of initiatives from organizations and foundations that do not directly involve with grantees of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, but which we believe are very important to know about. So without further ado, another video just to keep the tradition.
As coisas sempre aparecem nas dificuldades, o progresso aparece diante das necessidades. Ao passar dos tempos, começamos a observar que teria que se fazer alguma coisa dentro do complexo da Maré. A Maré crescia muito jovem, muitos problemas acontecendo.
Era uma facção de um lado e era outra facção de outro, então a gente vivia no meio dela, tá entendendo? Aí a gente não tinha para onde ir, tá entendendo? Ou saía daqui vivo ou saía daqui morto. Perdi muitos amigos, tá entendendo? Perdi muitos mesmo. Para sobreviver, eu imagino que sobreviveu uns 4 da gente, tá entendendo? De 400 só sobreviveu 4, que é que é a gente.
A melhor forma de combater esses problemas era com a educação. Depois houve uma grande necessidade que era o esporte e lazer, porque sabíamos nós que do esporte poderíamos conquistar muitos jovens para o caminho bom. E uma delas era se criar uma Vila Olímpica, e é aqui nós estamos hoje. Isso é uma das vitórias que eu tive.
A Vila Olímpica ela está situada num lugar para justamente atrair as crianças, porque ela está no meio de 2 facções. Então, como a Vila Olímpica ela está no meio, ela tem esse poder de conseguir unir essas crianças e mostrar que essa barreira não existe e que a violência ela não vai estar influenciando aqui dentro, que o esporte pode estar atraindo essas crianças, tanto as famílias. As crianças elas ficam menos tempo na rua, porque esse é o único espaço que as crianças têm com professor, com piscina, com quadras, com atividades que elas possam sair da escola e poder estar fazendo uma atividade sem estar na rua.
A Vila Olímpica conseguiu fazer um trabalho social paralelo à sociedade em evitar muitos problemas dentro da comunidade.
Vem, João Pedro, chega mais perto. Excelente!
Quando é que eu ia pensar de ter o Barcelona dentro da Vila Olímpica? Nunca eu pensaria, não chegava nem a minha ideia. Pois olha a distância que nos separa. E acontece o seguinte, o Barcelona se interessou a estar aqui. Ao Barcelona vir para aqui, houve interesse também de outras instituições a estar aqui dentro. Então isso é um grande progresso, já é um grande começo.
Todos os outros vão ter que fugir do pegador, tá? Quando você tiver correndo perigo de ser pego, você grita resgate, resgate, resgate.
Vai me salvar,
e qualquer pessoa pode te salvar com um abraço. A metodologia da Fundação Barcelona, ela é muito importante aqui na comunidade da Maré, porque a gente já vive com essa separação entre as pessoas, entre as facções. Então, como o projeto ele tem como filosofia justamente unir e integrar, então a gente vê que isso vai para além das crianças, isso vai para as famílias e isso com certeza acaba refletindo nas famílias e na própria comunidade. Combinado? Vamos lá então, vamos lá. Vai lá aquecer um pouquinho com a bola. Demora não, jogador! Tinha tocado, Thiago? Vamos, Carlos, vamos.
O projeto Barcelona foi um projeto que foi o carro-chefe de uma das estruturas social dentro do Complexo da Maré.
A gente tenta tenta evitar de ver, de ouvir, mas a realidade está aqui dentro. Quem mais sofre? Eu digo assim, as crianças, tá entendendo? Digo assim, as crianças, porque as crianças vivem essa realidade que acontece aqui, tá entendendo?
E aqui a gente vê que a violência está presente o tempo inteiro. A gente atravessa a Rua da Vila Olímpica e a gente já vê pessoas armadas, a gente já vê situações agressivas que retraem a violência.
O projeto Barcelona deu uma autoestima a esse jovem, não só pelo interesse do esporte, do futebol, mas a prática do lazer também. Para as mães foi uma grande coisa, porque isso trouxe tranquilidade até dentro dos lares, porque a ansiedade de estar aqui dentro da vila, dentro do projeto, é muito grande pelos jovens. Isso traz alegria.
So, Mària, we talked a little bit in the previous conversation about FootballNet, and I'd like to ease the discussion into this panel by starting to talk a little bit about the values behind the program. I mean, what is it about, really? I mean, we saw kids playing there. What do you try to do with this program, and how does it build up a community?
Okay. Thank you, Panos. Before asking your question, let me please thank you and tell you again that we really feel very proud to be part of this family. We have been also attending the conference, and these 3 days has been really interesting and enriching. And for us also it's very relevant because, as Nacho said, but for Barça, commitment in social transformation is really important. And inside this context, we really want to be catalyzers of change, and we really want to be an inspiration for other actors. So we intervene at different levels. Of course, we have our methodologies, that I will come back to this. But we also want to show the world our values, what we are fighting for, and how we want to make a better society. You all know that Barcelona has a big social media fans, followers, 300 million, which not any brand could say it about. Yes. So for us it's also important to change this narrative and show to the world how we can be an inspiration and fight against this idea that the sports world is contradictory with the social commitment. So this is a context. Then, in terms of values, this is something that has been in our ADN as a club, And the idea of strengthening the foundation and its impact is a demonstration of this. We have our values in the club and in the foundation. It's based on heart, which is heart, humility, effort, ambition in the good sense, teamwork. Yeah. So our methodologies are based on those values, and we use these methodologies based on sports and on these values as an educational tool to really challenge the reflection of the children and really make them more ethical persons by reflection and by expertising these methodologies. What we don't do is about technification of sports. I mean, this is something that relies on the club's excellent sportive behavior, but we really use this sport tool as a challenging for the reflection of these children based on these values, so that they can overcome conflict situations. We open dialogue among them without words, because words have a lot of weight. And the good thing about the sport is that it's a universal language. So this is what it's about.
So, Mària, you mentioned heart, the values of FootballNet. You said humility, effort, ambition, respect, and teamwork. So, Mariona, how do you implement these values through the activities? Give us some examples. So, let's say you want to promote teamwork somewhere. Why would you promote teamwork and not another value, and how would you promote it through an activity?
Okay, it's done by several ways. The first thing, the FootballNet methodology, which is based with the Football 3 approach that was born in Colombia when Andrés Escobares was killed after doing an autogol in the 1994 World Cup. And this creates a movement of saying we need to transform this negative energy into a positive energy. So based in this movement and this approach, it was born the Football 3, which is a 3 steps methodology. The kids set up the rules, they implement the activity, and then they do the dialogue and reflection. So to give you an example, if we want to strengthen the teamwork, the kids might decide that to score a goal, the ball has to be passed to all the members of the team to be counted as a goal. If not, it will not be counted as a goal. So this is the rule that they will set up at the beginning. They will do the activity, the match, the training, the game, and then at the end, they will dialogue and they will do reflections and see how easy it was to accomplish this rule, or how difficult it was, and how they felt. Because this is very important for us on this transforming the social situation. Is about attitudes, but it's about feelings and about beliefs. So the experience of the value is very important for us, and how they have felt about following or experiencing this value, it's one of the most important things.
And here, so for instance, someone hears FootballNet, they think of football, boys play football, you're planning to implement FootballNet in refugee camps in Greece. What's the role, again, and we discussed this in the previous conversation a bit, what's the role of girls, refugee girls, or women in this program? How do you engage with them? They're not all of them are interested in football.
It's called FootballNet, but it's not about football. I mean, the activity can be nothing about football, can be another sport as netball that girls usually like, or it could be games. It's the methodology, not the sport, which is important. We have done some FootballNet programs in Arabia Saudi with only girls, and for them was the first chance they had to do a sport or be dressed with sport dresses. Mm-hmm. It was all closed, so no men could go and watch them. But we normally encourage, and one of the rules we try to establish is that groups that they enjoy the football net, they need to be mixed. So we encourage girls to be part of them, and we discourage to do only football, so we encourage to do other activities.
And what was the difficulty of actually implementing football net in the Mare at Brazil? I mean, how did that come about? Did you just show up and say, hello, we have a nice program, here it is? Or, you know, did people have to do a lot of things? I mean, in our discussions, you said that it's in a place between two fractions, and green zones usually, or borders, are very tough. I mean, you have a slide here, that's in Lebanon, where you implement the program. I mean, this was in the green zone during the Civil War. People fought. You don't actually see it. We see the slide, but you don't see the slide. When the slide comes up, you will see the famous hotel in Lebanon, where people were fighting room to room during the Civil War. Usually, and green zones are green zones because no one goes there and they're green. So choosing a border between two competing fractions to do something sounds counterintuitive.
Our objective is to build communities together. The refugee program, it's not only for refugees, it's also for local communities for a better coexistence. So in the case of Miret, in the favela of Brazil, it's a violent context. They have their own small war inside that neighborhood. What we achieved is that the sons of the leaders of the different commanders, fractions, are playing on the football net program. So there is a truce between the hours while they are playing, and after 5, the truce is over. But we managed to get this environment of confidence, of security, and the most important, this was achieved because it was supported by the local community. So we can offer the methodology, but it needs to be built by the local community. And we always, as Nacho mentioned, work with local partners that know the context, that know the social dynamics in the community.
Before I move on to Simon and I pick up on the subject of truce, don't forget that you can still send your questions. We will be looking at them and incorporating them in the discussion as we move along. Simon, it seems that for the program to be implemented, there had to be some sort of truce, and you have written on the subject, and it was through your books that I realized that when Pelé went to play with Brazil in the 70s, the Nigerian Civil War paused for a couple of days in order for the game to take place. Is there something about truce and football that is closer than between Olympic Games and truce? And Alexander can also step into that and comment.
The most famous example is the Christmas truce during World War I. Christmas 1914, the British and German soldiers go and greet each other on Christmas Day, and they play several football matches along the front in no man's land. Does football bring peace? No, because the World War then continued for 4 years, and most of those people who played football on Christmas Day were dead by 1918. So I think we mustn't at all overstate. The Kuper town was wrong. Sport doesn't bring peace. Countries fight wars to pursue their interests, to pursue the ruler's interest. We mustn't make too much of this. What I think is beautiful about a program like you're doing in Brazil is football brings happiness. Football brings health. Football is an anti-crime program. Football is a community program. Football doesn't change the world, but it can change the lives of kids in one place, and that's enough. We shouldn't overclaim for it. I mean, people think Brazilians love football, which is true. Most Brazilians never get a chance to play football. Brazilian females, almost excluded from football. Brazilian males, where the hell are they going to play if you live in Rio or Sao Paulo, these mega cities with no space? So just to give people the chance to play football is an amazing achievement. And also, if you want to make your country good at football, why has Western Europe won the last 3 World Cups? Because it's a social democratic region, the most successful region in the world at giving kids the chance to play football. So sport doesn't change the world, but it can change people's lives here and there in a small way, and that's huge.
Alexander, does history support that?
I would totally agree. We shouldn't be too idealistic, because I think it is difficult. George Orwell once said that sport is is war minus the shooting. So, and those of us who follow Greek professional sports would understand that. But I think sport, and precisely because it's so difficult, I think the value of what the Barcelona Foundation is doing is all the more impressive. Sport gives some values that can be accessed, but you've got to be determined to do so. And the Olympic truce existed in the ancient Olympics. It was the ekecheria in Greek, and it was a cessation of hostilities to allow people to to travel to the Olympic Games in Olympia. Now, the International Olympic Committee revived that in the 1990s. In actual fact, very little happened, but in the 2000 Olympic Games in Sydney, North and South Korea marched together. And earlier in Lillehammer, I think Yugoslavia participated, even though there were hostilities going on in that country. So I think sport can contain certain principles and certain values that can be used towards peace, but it's no way automatic that sport will actually bring peace. The competitive nature of sport can create the opposite thing, but the values of fair play and respect of the opponent can actually lead to a different result as well.
So it seems that a temporary truce or peace is an implemented tool to get to something else. And here is where I come to Dre, who is in this panel almost by mistake, one would say. Because the way we approached Dre, it's a very interesting story. Dre, he will speak specifically about what he does. Had a number of pictures on their website where they did their projects, and in every picture there was a football pitch and a football. And we said Dre works a lot with public spaces, and indeed he does, and in a very idealistic but also pragmatic way. So we are thrilled to have him on the panel to give us a different aspect about public space and placemaking and creativity, and how this can fit into the questions that we are talking about, truths, and later on about how sport can fit in society. Dre, I know you have quite a few slides, so I'll pass this on to you, and you can have Parkinson's disease to press them fast enough to progress.
Thank you. Yes, so...
oh, by the way, if you press the button actually once, this is actually something very interesting, because when we got in touch with Dre, we found out that Favela painting is a 28-minute cycle from the place in the video where you saw. So we were like, Dre, you're so close, why don't you talk to each other? And then Dre explained to us, to me basically, that to get from the place where the football net happens to the Favela painting is not 27-minute cycle only, it's a different world and a different process, right?
Well, I think even the concept of cycling from that one place to the other is very interesting. It's something that I think nobody from Miret or from Villa Cruzeiro would ever have. But coming from Holland, obviously I'm an avid cycler, so I did cycle around there quite a bit, but it's a scary endeavor to cycle there.
So, if you click twice,
yeah, so, well, I mean, I really feel great at this panel. I mean, I don't feel out of place, but I don't work with sports, I work with art. And maybe it would tap in a little bit more to day one, where it was about art and placemaking. But you asked me specifically to give a quick introduction about our work. So this is like a little sort of mini TEDx Agora moment for me, where I'm going to talk about my project for a second. So this is Villa Cruzeiro. This is where we started working. I have to do this really fast because I have too many slides. And we, together with my colleague Urhahn, I started a project called Favela Painting. So we don't play sports, we paint. It's kind of the simple explanation. This is Urhahn and me standing in Santa Marta. This was one of our most famous projects in Rio. You see a finished picture later. And this is really kind of the work that we do, which taps into some of the stuff that was talked about in day one, where a lot of these things were touched upon of art being able to create like this weird sort of space, like a spark of fire, things that people said, all these things like you create some sort of a wondrous world. We often call it, we try to turn reality inside out or something, and you create something completely unexpected. like me in this panel. What we did is we painted, for absolutely no apparent reason, we painted an entire street in a favela in Brazil in a Japanese wood block print style with carp. And the cool thing was that nobody asked us why. Like, it was completely logical for everybody that we did it. It took us 8 months. There was wars going on, bullets were flying around. We actually moved into the neighborhood and we lived there. And this is really the type of, it was kind of an experiment, and it grew into a whole thing, like a methodology. And now I will actually go fast, I promise. So this is the whole street. There was this, like when we started, we thought like, oh my God, what did we do? But we actually we finished it somehow. Then the third project we did was, our most famous one, is a square. And this was a square that was very famous in Brazil for being a total no-go area, where you would actually, it's in the center of Rio, but people would go there, everything was heavily armed, all the roofs had guns on them, and there was absolutely no way police would be able to enter. And this place, together with the inhabitants, we kind of recreated into some sort of an really super simple explosion of color. And it became, I mean, I'm also not saying like sports doesn't save the world and doesn't stop war. Art doesn't stop war either. We didn't stop the war in there. This was a pacified favela, I have to say that. So, but together with the people, we did recreate or reimagine their space and made it a destination. And there's, I think on every tourist map of Rio, you will actually find the directions to this square.
One can see the children playing football just in front of the square again.
Yeah, here they're playing, like, they're doing capoeira, they're doing football, but even like, there's like a rapper from Angola came and he recorded this video there. Like, it's a super random stuff, which I think is really cool. Other things like this guy, Thiago, who I met the first day that I came there, and he had this idea, like, hey, if you guys paint here, I will start like a touring agency and I start bringing people in. Now I think he started doing once every week, then every day, then 2 shifts a day. Now he has a whole bunch of people working for him, and he started his own little company, and you see like Instagram pictures of our square pop up like almost every day. And people selling like little, like they do their own thing, like sell their own little souvenirs. And when we did this, we started blowing up this idea also to other cities. So this is actually Philadelphia. This is North Philly. It's Germantown Avenue, just south of Lehigh, the crossing of Lehigh, where we went for 2 years, and together with the community, we rebranded the whole neighborhood. And it was a dilapidated neighborhood. There was no shops. Everything was closing. And after 2 years, it kind of revived again a little bit, at least as much as it could bounce. And so the whole street is basically just transformed. And again, nobody who lived there asked us why. Everybody thought it was a logical thing. And now if you drive through it, people actually, instead of pushing the gas and getting out of there, as it used to be, people stop their car and get out and ask people in the corner, hey, what is this? Which I think is really fun, a fun thing that we did. And this guy used to stand on one of those corners, and now he speaks at the desk of the mayor of the city. So it was cool that these type of projects open up roads for that and stuff like that. Okay, I'm going to go fast. This is our project just started meandering all over the world. This is in Port-au-Prince in Haiti. And I specifically put this in because actually this is a 26-minute bike ride from here probably, because this is the harbor of Athens, in a camp called Skaramagas, where we were invited by a movement on the ground, who is also present here, to do like a flash intervention. And we just went there with no idea. We had some paint, and when we arrived, it was just cement and gray and dull. And we thought with paint, we could actually create some sort of a recognizable space. And within a day, we painted a square that was actually taken from a design from a mosque. And it became like a magnet for people. Like as soon as it was done, people just started going there, and it's really cool that such a small, I mean, it's not a lot of work, but the effect is immense. And we started doing more of these projects. This is actually the same thing translated to Holland. And together with Movement on the Ground, we're we have plans to do this in more camps. We actually would like to bring this to Lesbos as well in the future. So I'm going to go fast. This is like all the teams that we work with. They consider themselves colleagues. So these are from Haiti, the other was from Philadelphia, and they're from Rio. They're in touch with each other over WhatsApp. This is in Guatemala. This is in Holland, refugees that arrived in a center for asylum seekers that paint with us. Sometimes we bring them all together. We invited them for like a lecture where they all met each other. And here I wanted to speak about other stuff, but it's too long, so I'll just go through it really fast. So I give the other people a moment to speak as well. So this is all. This is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are many themes in what you mentioned. I notice participation, I notice the relationship between infrastructure and activities in what you do. But before we delve into them and see how they relate to other discussions that we're having in the panel, how was, if any, your experience of fear in doing some of these projects? I mean, you walk into a place, you know, when I told you you're half an hour cycle from the Mària, you say, no, that's not how it works. It's a difficult place, so you arrive there to do something. How do you manage it in terms of practicality and your relationship with community?
In these type of projects, the most important thing is that you are very well connected locally. So you make sure that you have local partners, and those partners could be kids, or it could be parents, or social workers, or even family of drug dealers. Like whoever is present and is willing to kind of see that you are serious, and your attention is serious, and your ambitions are serious, will take you under their wing. And I think that, I mean, I've had a lot of scary moments, and maybe I wouldn't all repeat them. Now I'm a parent, but I think siding with the local people always takes away that idea of fear, because you're in their situation. So,
yeah. So you relate overcoming fear or managing difficult situations with a respect for locality and what is there. And you mentioned movement on the ground, which is also apparently a partner of the FootballNet program in Lesbos, it is, right? So, you know, and this is a question both for you, Dre, and for Mariona. At the end of all these programs, I mean, what really stays with you? Is it the end result of the programs, or sometimes the process of getting there? I mean, you know, we talked yesterday about there's some great films, and also there are films about how the films were made. So if you watch Apocalypse Now, you can love Hearts of Darkness. So, and some people love the making of better than the film. Is it such a case here? Is the end result as important as the journey?
In our case, the journey is the most important. I always say each football net is very different in every place, and it's a learning process in every place, and it has to be adapted, and because people is different, and the context is different, and we are human beings with specific characteristics. But for me, sports and art can help to do this process, no? of changing for a better society. The first day we were talking about the infrastructure, the public spaces, yesterday about polarization, but we need to put content on that to break down those categories that, you know, we were talking yesterday. And for sure the process and for us one of the most important things is the transfer of the methodology. So we want to transfer knowledge, and then people have tools to work with for a better coexistence, for a better dialogue between their communities.
And where is the line between implementing a vision and being sensitive to locality? I mean, in your case, Dre, I mean, you know, you had a vision, obviously, of how to go about in these public spaces that people used for various reasons, either to do crime or to play football at some point or to discuss. Then you had a vision. Was the local aspect of your engagement about sharing their vision as well, or was it more about getting things done?
I think it's a combination. I think that when we first started, we kind of came with a lot of baggage, and we said, hey, we're going to change your space, and this is what it's going to look like. And we completely changed, and we basically just arrived somewhere and with no plans at all anymore. And I think that our flexibility has become our strength. We kind of have like a collective sort of process in order to actually figure out what you're going to do. So many projects actually start with us asking if we should leave and if we should do nothing. And then we kind of build up the reason for us to do something there after our arrival.
And the other theme that I realized from both the video of FootballNet and your presentation was almost like a tension between the need of infrastructure and the need for activities, right? So, Mària, you know, in the video it was mentioned that the children have swimming pools, places to play football and stuff, and they stay off the streets. Would that be enough? I mean, if that was enough, this thing would happen everywhere. So is Amaro, the person you're working with, wrong? Was it not the swimming pools and the football pitches, but something more?
Well, from our perspective, Mariona mentioned this. We really believe that we have to give the content, the methodology, in order to build this community, to overcome some of the problems, violence, aggressivity of children. So we really prioritize this over infrastructures. Of course, it's very important, no, that the children can access to a place where they can do that, and that this place symbolizes this truth or this space of peace where they can stay there and learn these values, and this can have an effect on their day-to-day life. But from our perspective, if we have to prioritize, because this is important, we cannot be everywhere, we will prioritize not the infrastructure, but the content, the knowledge, and this energy that we pass through our well-known brand that really attracts the children.
So, if that's the case, then why do sport organizations engage in significant infrastructure projects?
Yeah, I would say in our case, no, maybe many of you have been in the Camp Nou, you have been the installations. The Camp Nou, in our case, is a living space that is a part of our urban landscape, is part of our history as well. We are visited in an average of more than 6 million persons per year. We have now a new plan that there will be a new stadium built, and all the area will be completely transformed, giving much more space to the public space, because we really want to be part of the city, part of the movement to build this community. And for instance, we have done this year two events in our space, because this is a community that is united, no, by the values and the passion for sport. We have been doing a bullying conference, 2 days conference, because we are developing a specific methodology to tackle the issue of bullying among children and young people. And we brought a lot of victims to our stadium. We celebrate, and they gave testimonies. All of the victims, all of them, they were children, they were families of the victims. For them it was so much important to talk from that platform that is Barça, is the Camp Nou, no? This symbolic, that all of them told us this has been the end of a phase, a traumatic phase for us. You cannot imagine what it means for us to talk from your speaker, and this speaker that can reach all the world, no? So I think this is the role from the foundation and the social commitment of the Barça, we can play from the infrastructure and make more accessible this kind of space for this kind of activities.
Pano, if I can just, I think in some ways these projects, DRE's and the Barcelona Foundations, it's very difficult to quantify the actual results. It's a little bit like teaching at a university. Who knows what we've contributed teaching. It's difficult to measure. We hope we've done something. I'm reminded of studies of colonialism that talk about the colonized people having lost their dignity and the need for them to find ways to get their dignity back and feel their identity. And it seems to me that at the first instance, if nothing else happens, these projects of the painting and of the Barcelona Foundation give these people who have no hope a sense of hope and dignity. And that, I think, is such a worthwhile starting point that I would say success.
And would you say that there are cases in the past, we discussed a few of them, that they relate to that? I mean, the playground movement in the US. I mean, would that fit that narrative, or was that something completely different?
Yes.
The playground movement, by the way, and this is totally spontaneous.
Yes.
Can be seen in this picture here.
Yes. This is the famous playground movement that began in the United States as a result and as a response to industrialization and the fears that people had that crowded cities would negatively affect people's health and well-being. So there was a directed top-down program of establishing playgrounds, literally playgrounds for young children, but also sports facilities in the middle of the towns, which operated as public spaces in which people could, in a sense, do the things that industrialization threatened to take away from them, and there was a sporting culture that developed through that. Theodore Roosevelt, the US president at the turn of the century, was very much in favor of these type of activities. So this is an example of how you can intervene through sports to change the social dynamics in a particular situation. The playground movement in the end died out in the 1920s, but it's got a huge legacy. And I'm always fascinated because tourists who arrive at West 4th Street in Manhattan to see the West Village and Bleecker, if you come out at the West 4th Street subway, there's a basketball court there, and it's kind of a surprise. That's the legacy of the playground movement.
Dre, what would be the legacy of the favela painting in the places where you have painted and you created the spaces?
That's a good question, because at first I thought that, or we thought that the legacy would be the works of art, but we hadn't realized that paint obviously degrades pretty fast. So a good example is like somebody in our project saying, whatever happens in my life and whatever course my life will take after this, I will be able to come back here with my children and show them what their father has done. And it was like a super beautiful thing. And then 5 years later, the painting would be gone, So I thought, oh my God, what is he going to explain to his children? So one of the things that we're doing right now is we're actually experimenting with different type of materials. So we're still called favela painting, but we work a lot with colored plaster, tiles. So now the idea is that person can come back with his grandchildren and show them what granddaddy did, or grandmommy. We work with both sexes, obviously. So that's kind of a legacy, obviously, the work. And the other thing is that people are, like, when we started, this was not really a big thing. I think the mayor of Tirana, back in the days, had a beautiful big arts program, but it was not something that was like implemented all over the world on a regular basis as some sort of method. And nowadays you just see it like everywhere, like every city, every mayor, every company, like everybody just wants a big painting in their city. So for us it would be interesting to actually build some sort of, like build out methodology behind it and the ethics and the morals, and kind of build a platform for people so that they know what they're doing. Because we've been doing this for 11 years and we've made so many mistakes that I would hope that our legacy would be to help other people avoid those mistakes.
Simon, we have been talking about what, we have been doing what specific activities have been doing in terms of reshaping public space, not just in terms of aesthetics, because I think it is clear from this discussion that, football net, favela painting, the playground movement, they all had a different approach to this. And this is a question from the audience, is how, it's both of a social nature, I think, and a philosophical nature, how can a panel of predominantly white people be able to actually go and direct the kind of activities or changes that can happen in small locations and remote places all over the world? How can we actually understand this? And this is an important question, and I'm glad it is actually put, because it has to do with the epistemic dissonance that one can have with reality. We face it every day at the foundation when we have to evaluate a request. How do you actually know the situation on the ground? So how can we actually make a step towards a direction that can engage us with what we all want to achieve at the end?
Ideally, the project becomes something that you didn't plan. And the best projects, the best development projects, you arrive and people say, there is no local community for a start. There are different people living in a place who have different interests and don't always get on or agree with the same stuff. And often you end up with an older guy with a beard who says, I am the community leader, you must speak to me. I represent the community. To which the obvious question is, as they say in Monty Python, who elected you then? Who elected you king then? And so there is no community, there are no community leaders, so who the hell do you deal with? Ideally, your project becomes distorted and changed by people using it in ways that you had never anticipated, but that works for most people there. I bet it pisses off people there as well. I mean, there are people who didn't want that space to be a football field. There are people who don't want the street to be a work of art, chosen largely by you. So you will never make everybody happy, but let's hope it gets taken from your control into other people's.
And you just said something very interesting. Some people might not want a place to become a football field. And Dre, how did you actually choose the paintings that you did when you did them? I mean, did you actually talk to the people and say, what would you like to have painted there, or did someone dictate it?
I think that it's a combination. Like sometimes for instance, in Philadelphia, we were kind of told, like, could you do something in this particular street? So we were like, oh my God, I don't know, yeah, maybe, and we did it somehow. And in other places, you just walk around, and then you walk around with a group of people that might call themselves representatives or are called representatives by others. Those are mostly the best representatives, the ones that are appointed by their peers. And then people just say, like, okay, whatever you have done in the past, it would be great if you could do that here. And then they just show you a place. The same way they would show the perfect place for a football field. Because they know where it should be, obviously, better than...
Well, this is I'll be honest, I was trying to find a way how to link this with the next video, and you just gave me the perfect cue here, because you said, what's the perfect place for a football field? And the next video is a video of an initiative that none of us here are related to, but football is something, as we said in the beginning, massive. So we can only learn from things that other people do and take them into account. So on the question of participation, how do you know the local needs of an area and which is the perfect place of a football field, people have been doing interesting things in Thailand. So here is a video that, a very short video of an unrelated organization to all of us here that does something great that relates to quite a few of the discussions we've been having on public space. Once more.
วัยรุ่นเนี่ยเขามีความสนใจอยากจะออกมาแสดงหรือออกมาใช้ความสามารถของเขา เวลาที่เขาไม่มีพื้นที่แบบนี้เนี่ยสิ่งที่เราจะเห็นเลยเขาจะกลับมาอยู่กับตัวเองและอาจจะเริ่มอยู่กับอะไรที่เขาสนใจเฉพาะมากๆซึ่งมีโอกาสที่จะมีปัญหาตามมาได้
ก็มันมีหลายกลุ่มอะพี่กลุ่มแบบไปแว้นมั่งไปมั่วสุมกันมั่งอะพี่
วัยรุ่นในชุมชนแออัดก็ต้องการพื้นที่ที่จะแสดงออกอย่างสร้างสรรค์เหมือนวัยรุ่นทุกๆคนแต่พื้นที่ที่เขาอยู่อาศัยกลับไม่เอื้ออำนวยไม่มีเชฟไม่มีรูปทรง
ตอนแรกผมก็นึกว่าเฮ้ยมันจะเล่นได้ไงวะแบบสนามมันมีบิดเบี้ยวอย่างเงี้ยพอได้เล่นมันแบบรู้สึกแปลกแบบมันได้เล่นแบบหลายมุมหลายที่อะไรเงี้ยผมชอบแบบพวกเพื่อนผมก็ชอบกันทุกคนเลยครับอยู่แฟลตเดียวกันเราไม่เคยเจอกันเลยแล้วก็เลยมาเจอกันที่สนามเนี่ย
เพราะว่าเด็กคือผู้ใหญ่ในวันข้างหน้าการที่ว่ามีสนามให้เขาออกกำลังกายมันจะลดปัญหาไปได้เยอะครับพ่อแม่เขาก็ลดความเป็นห่วง
ไม่ใช่แค่เรื่องของเด็กและเยาวชนนะคะมันจะส่งผลต่อผู้คนที่อยู่โดยรอบพื้นที่เล็กๆที่ถูกออกแบบนี้ด้วยค่ะ
ถ้าเราให้ความสำคัญกับพื้นที่ที่ไร้ประโยชน์พื้นที่ในชีวิตของทุกคนก็จะไม่มีคำว่าเปล่าประโยชน์
Well, very simple idea that plays on a lot of themes. I mean, you know, football could be an 11-on-11 game in the Camp Nou, and it can be a 3-on-3 game in a field. It can be played in a schoolyard, in a refugee camp, with a good ball, with a bad ball. So it plays on that theme. I can, you know, after having discussed how you know, you guys have been running football and how you, Dre, have been doing favela painting, I can not even imagine the difficulties that these people went in getting everything arranged so that I could have the particular changes made in those really difficult urban spaces. But what seems to be the case here again is participation, ownership of space is important, and it also raises a number of issues in terms of what really is the modern public space. To my eyes, at least, those areas there seemed much more public, even though they were enclaved, than a modern museum. A modern museum usually has visitors who are tourists, they don't engage. Squares nowadays, they tend to be places where people just pass by and they don't stop. And it seems that areas that have to do with football per se are maybe the new architecturally defined public spaces that are truly public. You see a football pitch from inside, they don't change that much. Yes, the Camp Nou may be different from you know, our local Karaiskaki Stadium, it's bigger, etc., but the main architectural issues about it, they are the same. So would you say that really, truly, in the 21st century, the last geographically defined public space is a football pitch, a football area? Alexander?
Well, I think, you know, the places where sport has taken place have changed dramatically. We've had the ancient Olympic Games, which were associated with religious festivals and cultural activities. And then we went over to the Colosseum and gladiators and bread and circuses.
And they had sport people like these guys.
Yes. And then we went on to local places where people got together to play what the Americans would call a pickup game. And then we arrived at professional stadiums. And now I think professional stadiums are reconsidering their isolation and the fact that they were devoted only to professional sports and are opening up their activities to maybe go back to the, again, I don't want to idealize the connection with the Olympic Games in no way, but the Olympic Games saw sport associated with other cultural activities. And maybe there is one football stadium in Athens I know very well that underneath has facilities for different types of sport. That's one model that can be followed. And the other one is to open up the stadium to give it more public access. And you know, when we're thinking about the impact on society, we should always remember, you know, that before we got professional sport, we had play and games and informal ways of interacting. So maybe the very professional model got very isolated and got far away from ordinary people, and I think there's a realization of that, and now this rather stratified model is understanding that it's go back to its roots, think about play and games and open access, and invite people back in a more participating way rather than just a paying spectator type of way.
Simon, the importance of the amateur game, the small sport activity, the little football field somewhere in Thailand. Here was an argument of how this is coming back into play and how it is important from a social and inclusive point of view. But you have also made an argument of how this can be important for the sake of a sports team in itself.
Yeah, I think the most successful societies are societies that give people, children, men, women, a chance to play sport. So Norway, Germany, the Netherlands, where I grew up, like you, playing football at the club around the corner with fields provided by the city council, which were cared for by the city council. It cost almost nothing. And it's no coincidence, I mean, in my book, Soconomics, we do an analysis of which countries are most successful at sports per capita. And pretty much the winner is Norway or Sweden. And then Australia is very high, New Zealand, Germany, Holland. And why is it these countries? These are social democracies. So a country that takes care of its people is also providing sport for them. It's a kind of measure. And the fact that Brazil does not do that, and that you had to go to Brazil to do that, is a sign that Brazil is not a successful country at taking care of its people. Just on the issue of public space, what is the stadium? I mean, you know, we have all sorts of public spaces. The cafe is a public space, the airport is a public space. But I think what's unique about football stadiums is it's the one place where you can talk about a kind of community gathering. So people use this cliche, which I hate, football is the new religion, which is obviously nonsense in many ways. But what is true is that just as the church was a gathering place for people who lived in that neighborhood to express common sentiments and to kind of unite together, that's what a football stadium is now. It's where you go, you wear the same colors, you sing, you have rituals which can go on your whole life. You know, from 6 to 85, you can be in that stadium. So I think in that sense, it's the community space, the most important community space that we have now that churches are empty.
Well, thank you all very much. We tried to cover most of the questions that were sent by the audience. I'm aware we did not manage to cover all of them. Thank you very much for participating. And before we close the session, I would just like to go for a final round of comments from our participants, starting with Mària.
Okay, thank you, Panos. I would like to end with a reply to Simon and Alexander that you said at the beginning. I would say maybe, yes, it's true, sports cannot save the world, but I think committed institutions can do a lot for that. And I really believe we have not explored all the potential that an institution like Barça or other sport institutions have to contribute to make a better world. And so we have a lot of work. And in terms of idealism, I think, yes, we should be idealists, because this is the way that we move forward to a better place that we imagine. So these are my final reflections.
So you're saying that there is, we're not quite there, a lot of untapped potential, a lot of responsibility, a lot of risk, but looking forward to it in a way?
Of course.
Okay.
I will put us a little example from Miret. If you ask to a kid in the favela of Miret, what do you want to be when you will be older, they will answer or a football player or a traffic drug leader. After we have been working in Miret for years, now you ask some kids and they say, I want to be like Michelle. Michelle is a lady from Miret who have studies and who could have look for jobs outside the favela and decide to be a social worker in Miret, and is giving different references for this environment for children to choose. So I do also believe that we can make a change.
And you think this change can be made on a global scale? Is it a universal kind of change that will apply to all kids in all places, or will it have to be very particular to the sensitivities of each area?
For us, the programs of the Barça Foundation will make change in very specific places, but the speaker of Barça can make big global changes. And the most important for us is to normalize children's life and that people accept the differences.
Thank you. Simon?
I've been going around Athens for 3 days, and of course I know Greece is a sports-mad country. I was there in Lisbon when you won Euro 2004, and I go around and I think, where are the sports fields? And I know that your professional football is in a very bad situation. The league is corrupt, the stadiums are dangerous, and it seems to me that there are so many sad things about what has happened to Greece these last 10 years, but this is one of them, the absence of sport almost. I mean, people consume sport just as television and often as foreign television because they don't even watch the local league anymore. And I think that if Athens had more places just where you could kick a ball, it would be a happier city.
Dre?
I think one thing that resonated in me was actually something that Alexander said about the quantification of projects. And since we are at a conference about philanthropy, it's interesting to, this is something that projects like ours have to deal with. I think that we create quality in some sort of way, but it's really hard to quantify. And it's also hard to fund projects like ours because of these problems. So I hope that philanthropists find flexibility for projects like ours. Yeah, that would be my 2 cents.
Let me second what Simon said about Greek sport. The Greek women's basketball team has just reached the Final Four in the European Cup. But after this conference ends, I'm going to drive up to the northern suburb of Athens, and I wonder how many basketball courts I will go by and how many women I will see playing. Probably none. And that kind of encapsulates one of these problems, the issue that sport is too championship-oriented and has to open up into society. And my other thought was to connect with what the Johns Hopkins president Daniels was saying earlier today about being at a tipping point. Whenever I go to a sports event here in Greece, I feel I'm at a tipping point. It could be a celebration of a lot of things. It could be an utter disaster. And I think sport has that dual quality. It can be used for very positive things, but in very wrong ways it can do the opposite. And as the Liverpool manager Bill Shankly said, football is more important than life and death. Okay, that's a kind of aphorism, but sport is too important to be ignored by philanthropic organizations and other agencies that are trying to change the world.
So on that optimistic note, on the sportsmen or sportswomen of the future, who will be different from handsome gentlemen. Oh, you don't see him, we see him all the time on that screen, the gladiator. Thank you all very much. Thank you all for your patience, thank you for your questions.
you to our panelists. While we all have you here, we want to share a small keepsake to remember us for this day. Please stay in your seats, we're not done, and trust me, you do not want to miss what is coming up.